The debate stage had already seen its share of tension. But everything shifted when Jasmine Crockett turned the conversation toward something almost no one expected: Melania, Trump's marriage. The audience leaned forward, sensing something unscripted. For a moment, Jasmine hesitated, as if weighing whether to go further. Then, with a quiet determination, she spoke about documents and reports that had long circulated behind closed doors. Rumors, contract details, and the suggestion that parts of the marriage had been more transactional than romantic. Within seconds, the room's energy changed completely. Even those used to harsh political sparring felt the discomfort ripple across the crowd. The moderators glanced at each other, unsure whether to interrupt. Cameras zoomed in on Jasmine's face, catching the flicker of resolve as she continued. Her words carefully chosen yet unmistakably direct. She described the whispers of prenups, renegotiations, and what some sources called silent understandings between Donald and Melanian arrangements that, if proven, could redefine how the public viewed their union. Then, just 24 seconds after she began, something cracked. Jasmine's voice wavered, her confidence slipping under the weight of what she'd chosen to reveal. Viewers saw it the moment the force of her own words seemed to hit her. The gravity of dragging someone's private life into public debate. Her expression faltered, her gaze dropped for a heartbeat, and silence swallowed the stage. Known for her unshakable composure, it was a rare, human glimpse of doubt. The audience sat in that silence, waiting to see if she would recover. And she did, but the crack had been real, undeniable. Commentators replayed it over and over, analyzing frame by frame, the tightening of her jaw, a brief look of conflict in her eyes. Some called it regret, others simple shock at her own boldness. Whatever it was, it proved that even the most confident voices can feel the weight of crossing certain lines. Yet even as Jasmine's composure broke for a moment, the words she'd spoken kept echoing. The idea that Melanian's marriage might have been built partly on contract and convenience wasn't entirely new, but it had never been brought up so bluntly on live television. By saying it aloud, Jasmine had forced everyone watching to confront what had only existed in gossip columns and anonymous leaks. And even if her voice wavered, the message stayed clear and sharp. Trump's response was swift and furious, called Jasmine desperate, vicious, and jealous. Melania, usually silent in political brawls, released a short statement condemning attacks on my private life. For a few hours, the headlines focused on Jasmine's moment of weakness, the crack that cameras caught. But beneath that, something larger stirred. People debating whether the private arrangements of public figures should stay off limits, or whether they reveal something real about power and image. Some viewers criticized Jasmine for going too far, arguing that Melanian's choices, whatever they were, shouldn't be weaponized. Others defended her, saying that the marriage had always been part of Trump's public brand, and therefore fair game. What made the debate so heated wasn't only what Jasmine revealed, but how raw her own reaction had been. The crack didn't look staged. It looked painfully real, a glimpse of the moral cost behind the political strategy. Jasmine herself didn't deny the moment. In follow-up interviews, she admitted the topic had been hard to raise. She didn't back down from the substance, but she acknowledged the discomfort in dragging private choices into the spotlight. That honesty softened some criticism. People saw not just a politician striking a blow, but a human being feeling the weight of it afterward. And for some, that mix of strength and vulnerability made her words resonate even more. As clips spread online, 2 parts went viral: the revelation itself and the split second when Jasmine's voice wavered. The first shocked viewers. The second connected them to her. It felt like a reminder that even in a political world obsessed with dominance, the cost of crossing certain lines can still shake the person doing it. That crack made the moment feel unscripted, raw, and real, something rare enough to be unforgettable. By the end of the day, the conversation had grown beyond Melanian's marriage, became about what lines politicians should or shouldn't cross, and what it means to bring personal truths into public debate. The moment Jasmine cracked became as central to the story as the words that caused it. Showed that truth, when spoken aloud, doesn't just wound the target, it can also wound the speaker. leaving behind a mark that cameras never quite let fade. In the days that followed, analysts kept replaying that 24-second stretch, the calm lead-in, the shocking claim, and the unmistakable falter. Some argued the crack made Jasmine look weak. Others said it made her more relatable than any perfectly delivered line could. The divide reflected something deeper, a question of whether vulnerability in politics is a flaw or a sign of honesty. But either way, the moment stayed on screens, shared in posts dissecting every glance and breath. Behind the cameras, even Jasmine's allies admitted surprise at her choice to go there. They debated whether mentioning Melania would distract from policy, but Jasmine had felt the marriage was part of the public myth Trump had built. What none of them expected was how deeply the topic would shake even her, someone known for calm under pressure. The crack wasn't scripted, wasn't part of strategy. It was the raw human cost of stepping past the line everyone else avoided. For Trump's team, the vulnerability was a gift. They pounced, framing Jasmine as cruel and unstable, claiming her crack proved she knew she was wrong. But the public reaction wasn't that simple. Many who watched saw something they recognized, the weight of saying something you believe to be true, knowing it will cut deeply. That honesty, however brief, became the difference between a cheap attack and a moment that felt painfully real. In later interviews, Jasmine refused to apologize for speaking about Melania. But she did acknowledge the difficulty of that choice. She insisted the real issue was the public's right to question the personal myths leaders present as political armor. That nuance resonated with some viewers. It wasn't about mocking Melania for scandal's sake. It was about revealing what those carefully polished images might conceal, and what that says about power itself. The moment also sparked a broader debate about women in politics. Some argued Jasmine was judged more harshly because of her gender, that showing emotion, even for a second, became the story overshadowing the substance. Others countered that the crack was exactly what made people listen, proof she wasn't a scripted soundbite machine. In both camps, the discussion revealed how narrow the space is for women to be both forceful and human on a national stage. As time passed, the anger over the revelation faded, but the image of Jasmine faltering did not. It stayed in viewers' minds as a moment of raw conflict, conviction, fighting with conscience. Far from weakening her, it made her words feel earned rather than performed. And for many, it reminded them that politics isn't only strategy. It's people wrestling with lines that can't be crossed cleanly. No matter how confident they seem, Trump continued to dismiss her, while Melania's silence after her brief statement became its own mystery. Rumors swirled, and journalists dug deeper into the documents Jasmine had alluded to, hoping to prove or disprove what she'd hinted at. In the meantime, Jasmine kept her focus on policy, refusing to let her moment of crack define her entire platform. Yet the clip lived on, replayed whenever the question of truth versus decorum returned to headlines in private. Some advisors urged Jasmine to toughen up, to never let the camera catch her voice breaking again. But others argued the opposite. That single moment of honesty had connected more deeply than any perfectly delivered speech could. It showed there's a cost to telling hard truths, and that cost can be as revealing as the truth itself. Viewers didn't just see a politician, they saw a person wrestling, live and unfiltered, with the impact of her own words. In the end, Jasmine's revelation became part of the political record, but the crack became part of her story. It reminded people that words can wound twice, once when they land, and once when the speaker feels the weight of what they've said. And in that brief, unforgettable moment, she showed that truth isn't always loud or certain. Sometimes it trembles, hesitates, and still steps forward anyway.